Senator Hughes, will the legislation include anything in terms of background checks for gun purchases? It seems like be a hot topic in the news these days, obviously.
The answer is no. This is going to contain these two major proposals right here, as well as here.
Do you either any of the three, do you think that background checks would help keep guns out of the hands of these folks who are?
It was not really the focus of our working group, and this is kind of based on what the working group came up with.
Can you speak a little bit more about like why now this is so important? I know you touched on that right there at the end, but if you could just go into a little more detail about why right now?
Well, you know, what we look at in our office is how do you protect Ohio families, and the most dangerous place to be is in inner city. In this state. You know, these kids have the same right as kids in other parts of the state to grow up without facing all the obstacles of a violent community. I think it's imperative. I think it's a moral imperative that we not put up with this. Quite frankly, sometimes if there's a homicide in an affluent suburban place, people get, you know, it gets very excited about it. If it occurs in an inner city, they get excited about it, but they think, well, that's just kind of the way it is. Well, I think we ought to say, that's not the way it is, or it's not the way it should be, and we're not going to tolerate it, and we're not going to put up with it anymore. And we're going to do whatever we have to do to let these children grow up. I mean, I could have picked headlines about innocent kids being shot at random. In drive-by shootings, and every community in this state has had it. Now, if you want to look at the statistics, I was looking at some statistics a moment ago. It shows there is, even though nationwide the violence has gone down, the number of gun-related violent crimes in Ohio appears to be going up. So, you know, why now? Now's the time to do it. I guess the better question is why we hadn't done it before. This has been an area I might mention that I've been very interested in for a long time. When I was in the state senate, 1981, 1982, I wrote Senate Bill 199, which provided a mandatory gun specification of 3 years. If you commit a crime in the state of Ohio under our bill, which actually was signed into law by then Governor Rhodes, you would have 3 additional years tacked on. What has happened since that law went into effect is, oh yeah, let me look here. Yeah. What we now have is if someone commits gun specification has gone down from 3 years to as low as 1. So we've actually gone backwards in that regard. Under some circumstances it's 3, some it's 5, some it's 7. But just having a gun in the commission of a felony under Ohio law is only an additional year. So we've gone backwards. But this is something I've been very interested in for a long time.
Doesn't this take away some of the judgment that the judges are allowed to use, some of the discretion? And right now they have the 1 to 5. Why go with the hard 11-year?
Well, there's two things. We're dealing with two things. We're dealing with two separate things. First of all, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. You've got this law which simply doubles it. So, you know, it just doubles the penalty for that one. This one, yes, it does take away discretion. The federal law takes away the federal judge's discretion as well. And it's been a very highly effective law. It has been a law that has really gotten at the violent repeat offenders and taking them off the street and incapacitating them. And it's worked.
Are most of these felony convictions done with guns, or what are the statistics regarding guns?
Not necessarily with guns.
Not necessarily.
Yeah. So are you looking, obviously you're focusing a lot on gun possession here. What about other, like, stabbings and other kinds of violence that aren't gun-related?
I think that that certainly can be addressed in other legislation. The charge we gave to this group was to look at violence that was being committed by guns. And this is not, this is not a comprehensive bill. This is we're going literally at a problem. We've identified a problem, and we're going at that problem.
Yeah, I might add, Mike,
Ron, jump up here and use the mic so that
the person convicted of the violent felony over here may not have committed it with a gun. If they stab someone and charged with felonious assault, that's a violent felony. If they're later found in possession of the gun, that's when this would kick in and would factor in the fact that they have that violent felony, even though a gun had not been used in the commission of the prior violent felony. And sometimes you'll have these people go in with a BB gun, and they'll pull up their shirt to show the teller or the usually it's a clerk at a fast food place or a convenience store, and it really isn't a gun. That may result in a robbery conviction because we can't get an armed robbery conviction because it was not a real gun. But if you catch them 2-3 weeks later, 2 months later, 2 years later, when they do have a real gun in a car, that again would kick in these kind of penalties. The series that Mike mentioned earlier that the Dispatch did, they found, and Ted Decker did a very thorough job as one of these 3-month projects, had a 5-part series. He found that 44% of the known homicide suspects that they had in the homicides here in Columbus in 2010 had a prior arrest for possession of a gun. And again, it gets to the people that we're trying to focus on who are committing the violent crimes, at least in my view.
I would just like to be more, not be vague to answer your question. Part of it is that the data aren't 100% clean, where we can always say whether or not those violent offenders are committing with guns or not gun, but probably I would estimate somewhere between 80 and 89% of them have a gun, a violent gun offense in their repertoire.
You're focused specifically on career criminals, gun specs. I'm going to guess this overlaps in some way with the recent corrections reform, maybe at least philosophically.
Yeah, good, excellent question. Let me speak to that. I think this is consistent with what the legislature has done in the last several years. The legislature and the governor's position has been, I think, very correctly, that prisons need to be reserved for the most violent, dangerous people. That's what this does. This tries to target those individuals. So I think it is complementary to what the legislature has done in the past. I think it's very consistent with what the legislature has done in the past. I was through this when I was lieutenant governor. We dealt with rising prison population. I fully understand that everyone who commits a crime in the state of Ohio can't be locked up and shouldn't be locked up. I fully support community sanctions. I fully support a gradation of penalties where the appropriate penalty fits the crime, and that appropriate penalty is simply not always to lock someone up. Conversely, however, I truly believe that someone who is likely or has a very good chance of killing my daughter or my son or my wife needs to be locked up. And we should always, always have room in Ohio prisons for someone who is likely to kill a member of our family. The essential function of government, above all else, and we do a lot of things in government, and a lot of good things. But there are only a few things that are essential and go to the core function of government. And protecting families is the core function of government. So if anybody looks at this, and I know there'll be criticism, and say, well, we can't afford this. We can't afford to lock these people up. My answer is tell that to the children, tell that to the victims of these people who are wreaking havoc on our communities. I think we cannot can't afford not to do it. We have to do it. It's an imperative. I think it's a moral imperative, and I think it goes to the essential function of government.